Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and our guest today is Darius Wallace. Darius is no stranger to stories. He has been in several Hollywood movies. He's a founding company member of Tennessee Shakespeare in Memphis, Tennessee, and he has performed all over the country in thousands of schools, universities, theaters, and libraries as Frederick Douglass. He also has been the TED Memphis coach for 7 years. He's a practitioner of Tai Chi, Qi Gong, and teaches methods of self-improvement through meditation. Welcome, Darius, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. There's so much to talk about. So tell us first what inspired you to pursue your career in acting and storytelling. And also would like to learn more about the Tai Chi Qigong thing. So I don't know if that's before or after, but I would love to kind of learn your background a little bit and your journey.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was a timid kid and my father was really worried about it. So one day he took me to see a movie. And when I came back from the movie, I started punching, kicking, and screaming. I had just seen Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. And I wanted to be Bruce Lee when I was a kid. And so I discovered had trouble with reading. And my father would leave books on my desk, hoping when I would wake up, I would try to read. And one book I did read was on the life of Bruce Lee, and found out that he was an actor, childhood actor. So that inspired me to want to act. And so I aspired to do it, but every time I would stand up in front of people, I would always forget all my lines. I was very shy, introverted, and I was this size since I was 13. And I've started to practice martial art, and so I was a prime target for gang life. And I was on my way in, and then there was an intervention with my middle school vice principal, who gave me an ultimatum. You can continue going the way you're going, or you can end up in jail, juvenile, or you can go the way I know you want to go, which is theater. Or I can tell you that. Well, let me be clear. You can send me to juvenile or jail, just don't tell my daddy. I'm sure with you being from Chicago, have you seen Good Times?
I
You know
haven't,
that
no,
show?
no.
You don't know Good Times?
No, well, I wasn't
You
born in
have to.
Chicago, so maybe that's why.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a famous show, but for those of you all out there who know Good Times, my father was the real James Evans.
Ooh.
So anyway, to make a long story short, in a moment of mindfulness, I ended up choosing theater, and it kind of took me out of that world. And I continued on that journey, and with some other interventions, my high school theater teacher really opened up the door of theater for me. And so I went on to a performing arts school, Interlochen Arts Academy, which is in Michigan. I went there for 2 years, junior and senior year. Then I went to SUNY Purchase in New York, and I left Purchase after my sophomore year. And then I got into my first acting job, which was with the Michigan Shakespeare Company, and started performing solo shows, one-man shows. First was Malcolm X, and then Martin Luther King, and now the most notable show that I do is on the life of Frederick Douglass. So that's my journey into being an actor within stories. But as far as storytelling and coaching storytelling, that all kind of happened by accident. I was a long time ago. I don't want to say when, how long, because I don't want y'all guessing nothing. So I was in Starbucks, unemployed actor, and the ritual is to go there and get me a coffee and a muffin. And in walks Burt Reynolds. You know who Burt Reynolds is?
Mm-hmm.
So in walks Burt Reynolds. And Burt Reynolds looks over at me, and I'm thinking to myself, now, by the way, it wasn't Burt Reynolds. It was a guy who looked like Burt Reynolds.
Oh.
And he was coming over to me, and I was like, please don't come. I just want to be by myself. And he came. He said, can I sit down? In my mind, I was thinking, no, you can't sit down. I'm unemployed. I'm trying to chill out. But I didn't say that. I said, sure. He sat down, and I wasn't sitting by Burt Reynolds. I found out later I was actually sitting by one of the most powerful men in Memphis, Tennessee. You might as well call him you could just call him the mayor. He wasn't the mayor, but he was that powerful. Anyway, he asked me the magic question. So what is it you do? And this is where communication and the power of storytelling comes in. Even though I was an actor, I was still an introvert, really didn't want to be bothered except when I'm performing. But when he asked that question, we actors, we have to be able to have our pitch. We got to be able to, sell ourselves. And I was ready and I gave it to him. Then he asked the other magic question: would you be interested in coaching my brokers?
Oh.
My response was, you paying?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, of course I am. Anyway, make a long story short, he did. I didn't know what I was doing, but what I did do is show them what I knew, which was acting, and they loved it. And he started to take me around to other organizations. So over the years, I ended up developing a program that blends acting technique with public speaking techniques, and then housing it in the structure of story, which is the structure of life, by the way. Story structure is the structure of life. And I've been helping entrepreneurs, speakers, presenters, influencers, team leaders, and the list goes on, in techniques in public speaking and techniques in storytelling to overcome fear and gain confidence in public speaking, because the biggest fear in America is not death.
It's public speaking.
Public speaking.
Yes.
Which means you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy.
I know it's hard for the introverts. It's painful. And even like when you mentioned earlier, like, don't talk to me, I'm not performing right now. So how does the energy works for introverts versus extroverts? Or when, because like what happens is, or what I learned from me, who I'm introvert, is like I get a lot of energy. Like it sucks a lot of the energy to when I talk to a lot of people. So then I get to a point where like I need my time alone. And I wonder if that's the same thing when you're acting and you are like, doing speeches and all the stuff. It's the same, probably similar feeling.
Absolutely. I would say that now in my life, have learned to be more extroverted. So I'm much more available, um, after performances or when I see people in the streets that may recognize me. I'm much more available, but I'm still naturally an introvert. In the past, I tried my hardest not to be available. I just wanted to do what I do, a great job, and go home and sit down and stream.
So in your opinion, so from a communication standpoint, what's the most important skill for effective communication? And again, this is all related with storytelling, right? And so how can you help people understand a little bit more that piece of it?
Well, there's a couple of things with that. One is, one of the biggest reasons why we fear public speaking is because we're so focused on ourselves. And just imagine when I was sitting in that Starbucks, if I really had shut down. Now, that conversation turned into 2 decades of coaching. That one conversation turned 2 decades of coaching, going on 3 decades. Well, two and a half decades. Oh my God. Can't believe
it. Don't date yourself.
Yes. But my point though is too focused on ourselves. And you never know the life you're going to touch when you open up for other people. That's number one. Number two is there are techniques you can learn. There are techniques that you can learn that will enable you to be able to have the confidence to engage people. And so if you're an introvert, really the extroverted life is a learned skill. But once you know how to use it, then you have techniques to anchor yourself and fall back on. But here's the thing. Once you see the impact that you have on people's lives, once you see that impact, it gives you more energy, because part of, I think, what happens to us as introverts, we don't realize, we really think we're invisible, and we're not. We're not. We're very visible. And so once we see that we're visible, once we see that we matter and for someone else, once we see that we count for someone else, then there's an energy of inspiration that connects with us. And so the first step really is that you get your attention off of yourself and on to other people. And so, and it's natural to be self-absorbed. It's really just very human, to be honest. You want to be accepted. You want to appear the best. You don't want to mess up. All that stuff is very natural. It's very human, but it also can limit us, right?
Yes.
But being an introvert is not wrong. There's power in being an introvert. We have the ability to draw so much power because we go within, and really and truly, most of who we are as human beings is energy. And the only way you tap into that is by going within. And therefore, most of our great actors are introverts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So if we go back to the storytelling piece, what do you believe are the key elements of a compelling story? And I'm sure this, it's related, like, overall with any work that people do, like, or if you're in marketing, or if you're like trying to implement compelling stories within the business. So what do you believe are the key elements for people to kind of like learn from you on that one?
Sure. Well, let me just tell you a quick story. There was a young man back in the 60s who wrote a screenplay that was very, very bad. None of the studios wanted to make the movie, and he was very, very depressed. But then he ran across a book called Hero with 1,000 Faces. Have you heard of that book?
Yes.
So you've heard of Joseph Campbell. And in the book, there's a concept called the hero's journey. And this concept is in every myth, every folklore, every great religion, every great movie, every great book. And it's thousands upon thousands of years old. It's even in nature. And so he studied it. He audited a class at a university in California and learned as much as he could about it, took the techniques, brought it back to his screenplay, rewrote it, and the studios loved it. They loved it so much they turned it into a movie in 1978. It's had many, many sequels. It is also a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and it's called Star Wars.
Yes.
And the young man's name is George Lucas. So what was it about the hero's journey that took a bad script, Flash Gordon, I believe it was, and turned it into Star Wars, which now is a religion?
Yes.
And it's because in that story structure mirrors the structure of life and mirrors the structure of nature, right? And really the universe, everything created, is happening in this cycle, this circle of life constantly. And so when we understand that, two things happen. We all can always understand where we are in our journey, in our own personal story, but also, too, we can discover it in other stories. And when we do that, we're able to reach and engage our listeners. No one makes decisions logically. We make decisions emotionally. And the quickest way to getting people to make a decision emotionally is through telling stories. Because when you tell me a story, images come up in my mind. I relate it to things in my life, and I have an emotional reaction to it. Now there's an emotional connection between you and I.
Yes.
And so, but it's good to have a skill set or a method of telling stories so that you can hit those points. There's about 15 different stages in the hero's journey that when you're hitting those stages, you can do it in a minute, believe it or not. When I'm working with business people, I help them tell stories. A lot of times it's very, very short, but very, very impactful. Because when you're doing business, you don't have time to tell elaborate stories.
Right.
But you have the ability to tell a story that's short. And in other situations, you can tell longer stories. If you're doing a presentation, a group presentation, it's good then to know how to tell longer stories. And when you follow that pattern, it works the same way all the time. It moves us to action.
So what are the key elements of compelling stories that captivates an audience?
Well, I have broken it down into what I call the 5 Ps. Purpose, person, place, problem, payoff. Purpose. What is the purpose of telling the story? The purpose of me telling the Star Wars story is that you walk away understanding that the power of story structure can completely transform your life in the most profound way, as it did George Lucas's life. When he took the structure and the techniques of storytelling, he rewrote his story, and now it became a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Person. Who are the characters in the story? There's George Lucas. There's the studio executives that didn't like it. The place, it's happening in the environment of movies, which, is Los Angeles. Problem. He has a story that sucks. What is he going to do about it? How is he going to take care of himself? How is he going to keep his relationship with the studios? And conflict or problem is the most important, because a great story without conflict is like a great car without an engine. It ain't going nowhere.
You always need conflict. Otherwise, it's a boring story. There's no story if there's no conflict.
Exactly. That's right. And then payoff. The payoff is that once he rewrote his script, it became Star Wars, and which has now impacted the whole globe for decades. And the payoff is always connected to the purpose. The payoff is always connected, so there's a complete circle there. So that's a very simplistic way of breaking it down. Actually, the hero, if we had time, I could break down the whole hero's journey. I can take your life, by the way, and break it all the way down. And you're going to be like, oh, how did you know that? Wow, you're telling me my story. It's because it's happening in our lives repeatedly over and over again. We're always going through it.
So when you coach people on this, like, what are the common challenges that people face with storytelling, and really how do you help them overcome those challenges? Well,
I've found 4 ideas that are not mine. They're thousands of years old. Aristotle is the one that brought these ideas to life, and you've heard of them before. You've heard of ethos? Have you heard of ethos?
Yep.
Yep. Pathos.
What's the name?
Pathos.
Okay.
Logos.
I don't know where you're going with this, but let's see.
Okay. And telos.
Okay.
Telos Aristotle said is the most important, but it's the least known. So ethos is that you have experience and expertise in what you're talking about, that you resonate and believe in what you're saying. But most importantly, this is going to be my point, is that you believe in yourself. And it's the story you're telling yourself about yourself. Because if you're telling yourself a negative story about yourself, that is the self that's going to show up in front of people, and it's going to transmit. Your lack of confidence is going to transmit to the audience. Pathos is storytelling. We talked about that. That's when you reach the emotions, passion. Logos is when you reach logic or reason, where you're able to argue or persuade. And then telos is the relationship you're building with the audience, and also what's the value, what's in it for them, what do they walk away with? But none of these things will be powerful if you don't have good ethos, if you don't have experience or expertise in what you're talking about, if you don't believe in what you're talking about, But here is where I answer your question. The biggest challenge, no matter whether it's somebody that has a lot of experience or not, is self-confidence, believe it or not.
Believe in themselves.
Yeah, believing in themselves. They're telling themselves constantly a negative story about themselves, and it's preventing them from going as far as they really want to go with their presentation, with their communication, with their storytelling. And so that's the biggest challenge. And that's really where we begin to start. It's the foundation is let's take the stories, the negative stories you're saying about yourself, and then let's respin it. Let's rewrite it and put it in the affirmative, in the positive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's where a coach helps here, because it can make the person see things differently, right?
Yeah,
And even believe in them. So you can believe in your own client more so that the client believes in themselves.
Yeah, sometimes that's what I needed. I needed someone believed in me until I was able to believe in myself. You know, we need people like that in our lives. You know, I had intervention, and I think me as a coach, a lot of times as an intervention, is spinning someone's mind to realize the asset that they have within themselves, and that their story is important, or the story they want to tell is important. And so that's the biggest challenge. But we get there, and then we're able to build.
Yeah. So can you tell us a story, since we're talking about stories, share a story, a successful story from any of your clients, coaching clients, who has significantly improved their communication skills because of how you help them and through these techniques?
Yes, absolutely. There's one young man during COVID. His mother I coached. She's in commercial real estate, and she called me up. I had coached her maybe several years before COVID. And she called me up during COVID and said, "Hey, I want you to take a look at my son. He is a massive introvert. He's good at technology or tech type stuff. He just lost his job and he wants to get another job, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do it because he doesn't interview well because he's so introverted. Can you work with him?" I was like, yeah, I got this. I'm good. Yeah, no problem. Just send him to me. It's all good. So he comes down to where my office was. I don't have an office in Memphis anymore. I'm kind of based in Georgia now. But anyway, he came down there, and it was a short guy, red hair. When he sat down like a 7-year-old kid that was on punishment. That's exactly what the best way I can describe it. And we worked on 2 sentences for 2 hours. And it was at that point that I began to realize or wonder if I can help him. Then I had to tell myself a different story about myself. And so I did. And I went the reverse. So I started to see what are his attributes. Discovered that he's a hard worker. So he's very kind, generous. I discovered he's very humble. And then I discovered I have several types of students. I have improvers. That means you know your topic so well you can almost improvise it at any given time. Outliners. That means you can look at your bullet points and you're good to go. Or memorizers. People actually do better when they actually memorize the content. He was a memorizer.
Ah.
And when I discovered that, then we said, okay, let's give me your interview questions, and we're going to answer them, and then we're going to drill them. And guess what? His confidence level started to come up as we worked on it, because we drilled it and we did all kinds of exercises with it, and he became brighter. Anyway, make a long story short, I worked with him for quite a few months, off and on. And do you know that he started to get interviews?
And of course he got the job.
He started to get second interviews. And then he got hired. But he was still getting callbacks and got hired at a couple of other places. And a year later, he wrote a text to me saying that he was just elevated to leadership.
Wow.
And then a year after that, his mother sent me a text and a video. He won an award.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And before we finished, he was walking, his chest out, very confident. So that was one of my favorite stories I like to tell.
Yeah, because it felt like a very hard case
Yeah,
to crack.
interesting enough, his name is Maverick.
Ah, interesting. So what advice would you give someone who's looking to improve their communication and storytelling skills at this point?
I definitely would say that if you're looking to improve, you do want to have some guidance. You don't have to wait for the guidance, only because we're living in an age now where you can Google or YouTube some things. But whether you do that or get guidance, one of the keys is you got to be willing to practice.
Yeah, that's key.
That's the key. If you're willing to practice, you can truly overcome, your any blocks in your
Because
communication.
that'll bring your confidence. Again,
It
it's all
will.
the practice, yeah.
It will be practicing. And I would say lastly, storytelling is a great way to do it. And your willingness to share elements of yourself, your own personal story, is the easiest because you know it the best.
That's right.
So that's something that you could do. And then also lastly, I would say, there's something that you specialize in. We all have something we're really good at. People seek advice from us for. When you begin to discover what that is, do more of it. Do more of giving advice on that topic, on that subject. But I would say, also too, one of the best things is when you want to grow is to get a coach.
Yes. So tell us about that. Like how do you help people? What kind of coaching do you do? One-on-one, group coaching? What are the different ways that you help people?
Yeah, I do one-on-one. Normally, I do group coaching too, but normally with one-on-one, I do packages of 4, so we meet 4 times. I also help with content, help you develop it. I don't write it, but I help you develop it. And then we discover how to execute it in a very engaging way. You do learn about the 5 Ps, and you do get a strong understanding of the hero's journey during that process. But we also discover not just the story. You can't just tell stories. You also got to make it make sense. And so, what is the logic behind it? What's the reason behind it? What are the ideas that you want to share? And I help you find those points and those ideas, because really the storytelling is what grabs us and engages us and moves us, but really the value is in the wisdom that you want to give us. And so we work to crystallize what that wisdom is. With group coaching, normally it's some of that, but it's also facilitating and helping you through pairing you up and doing a few exercises. And then I also engage with, storytelling and talking about the techniques. But we have opportunities to practice it in group setting, so that you can in real time learn how to execute the techniques. And so that's basically some of what I do.
So then who are the people that you typically help? Are people who are, like if you do the group coaching, could that be like someone in a corporation that maybe they need the team to help with storytelling, and then the whole team can be part of that type of coaching? Or it's a more like for small business owners, or it could be a mix of even people who are not even like business owners but do theater? Like, do you have different type of clients that you work with?
I do. I work with all different types of clients. However, sales is a big one.
Yes.
People that sales that they call upon me. People that are leading teams call upon me. People who have been elevated to some kind of a leadership in their space, but they're not used to presenting. I get a lot of that. And people who are influencers and really need to have the ability on panels or on stages to really knock it out of the park, are the people that normally contact me. In the corporate world, I seem to be called a lot from commercial real estate and construction, believe it or not.
Interesting.
because of project managers and their ability to communicate to clients as well as to the architects. But also financial advisors, lawyers. A lot of lawyers call me, attorneys, and a lot of public speakers, a lot of influencers. So
yeah, this is a skill that everyone needs to really, grow and learn them as much as they can in life. It's not even just for business, just for life. You gotta, it'll help you with influence, and it'll help you with so many things. If you are a good storyteller, if you have good communication skills, absolutely, it's the way to go. So,
yes,
well, thank
indeed.
you so much, Darius, for your all the insights, for all the strategies and kind of techniques that you talked about. So can you please share with where the listeners can find you so that they can, reach out? And I will still put the stuff in the show notes, but for those that are just listening, I wanted you to talk about where they can find you.
Sure. You can reach me via my website, which is DariusWallace.com. And you can also find me on YouTube, Darius Wallace. And then I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok. I'm on all those spaces, but primarily I do a lot through my website, Facebook, and YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Darius, for all the insights, for joining us today.
Thank
you to our listeners for tuning in. Again, I will add all the details from Darius in the show notes for those that wants to reach out to him. And please, for those that really like this show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. And Darius, again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.